We will be introducing our speaker for tonight.
This Juneau World Affairs Council presentation is a co-production with 360 North. It was recorded on December 4th, 2013 at 360 in Juneau. Bruce Botelho, a former Alaska Attorney General and former Juneau mayor, was abroad for the month of September in Germany, where he had studied as a young man. During his latest trip, he observed the country's political campaigns and elections. Botelho speaks on the 2013 German federal elections and the country's emerging Grand Coalition.
Well, thank you, folks. As you heard from the introduction, my background, I don't come as an expert on Germany, but I have spent a good portion of my life following events in Germany. My interest started out as a student. I studied in Germany in 1966-67 and again 1969-70, and made it a kind of a life practice to go back every couple of years to renew contacts with friends. On a couple of occasions I've had the chance to more directly delve into politics. I was invited while Attorney General by the German government actually to spend some time examining their judicial system, which again complemented my somewhat lay background in the politics. And most recently I spent September of this year in Germany. It coincided with the run-up to the elections which took place on September 22nd, and that's what I will focus on tonight. What I'd like to do just to start out is put it a bit into context, that is to say, what is the German structure of government, go through a bit of the major issues and players that were key to the election, look at the campaign practices and ultimately the outcome of the election, which even as we speak tonight are not entirely clear. That is, we know who's occupying the seats in the Bundestag, the parliament, but we don't know who is going to be running the government. And that uncertainty will be the case at least until next Thursday, the 12th, as I will explain in a moment. Let me begin by taking a quick look at the government. This is a fairly busy chart, but first to point out for folks is that when we talk about Germany, we make a distinction between the head of government and the head of state. In Germany, the head of state or chief of state is the president, the federal president, who at the moment is a member of the Social Democratic Party, Joachim Gauck, who attained prominence in Germany as a result of his efforts as a civil rights advocate in former East Germany. He's a Lutheran pastor by training and was selected recently. Normally his term, or the term of the president, would be for 5 years, but there have been two successive scandals that have cut the term short for the previous two presidents, leading to his selection. The head of government, on the other hand, is the Chancellor, and Chancellor is selected by the Bundestag, and one nominally talks about an upper house in Germany as well, the Bundesrat, or what's listed here as the Federal Council. It consists of representatives of each of the states, that is, whatever the ruling government is in each of the 16 German states is able to send a delegation between 3 and 6 members depending on population. It's proportional. And the role of the Federal Council, along with the Bundestag, is actually several-fold. It is that combination of the lower and upper house that selects the president in what is called here the Electoral College, or Bundesversammlung in Germany. But it is also, it does not serve directly the equivalent of the Senate in this country, in that not all laws require approval by the council. The exceptions are those that deal with laws that might implicate the jurisdiction or limit the jurisdiction of the states. It's also crucial with regard to constitutional amendments. And the final important role that it plays is in co-determining or approving the selection of federal judges. The election system itself, long title, mixed member proportional system, and you're seeing a little snippet right there of what is the cover ballot that a German a voter would actually see. Each voter is given 2 votes on the ballot. The first one is to actually select the member of parliament from your district. And the second vote you cast for the party of your choice. And what happens here is subject to a minimum hurdle, that is, any party that receives more than 5% of the electorate's vote is entitled to representation in the Bundestag. And the overall seat assignment, the number of seats, and how they are apportioned is directly determined not by the combination of 2 votes, but by the second vote. That is to say, if your party gets 40% of the vote nationally, you're entitled to 40% of the seats. Now, what actually ends up happening is nominally, the German parliament has 598 seats. That's the constitutional minimum. 299 of them are identified with individual election districts. And the other 299 then would be normally apportioned. What happens, however, is that a particular party in a given state might sweep most all of the individual districts, but still be at 40 or 45% of the electorate overall. And so if you were simply to take that first number and multiply by 2, what you have is what they call overhang seats. That is, you have more seats than you would be entitled to. And the German Constitution makes up for it by saying we simply increase the number of seats in Parliament. And so for the last cycle, the 2009 to 2013, the Parliament actually consisted of 622 members. So they were what they called 24 overhang seats. And the outcome of this election in September was to create an additional 9 overhang seats, so that Parliament, when it reconvenes and is configured with the new government, will have 633 seats. So this allocation of the Bundestag in the previous elections reflects the seats as apportioned by those parties which made the 5% threshold. And so you have here the Free Democrats, the Christian Democrats, and the Christian Social Union. Now, just to explain, you'll see both of those. The Christian Democrats, the Conservative Party, which actually runs candidates in 15 of the 16 states. And they have a non-compete agreement, in essence, and have had since the formation of the German Federal Republic in 1949, to allow or accepts the Christian Social Union, which is Bavaria. And the two of them always combine on the federal level, and hence are reflected as one voting bloc. Gruene are the Green Party. SPD or SPD is the Social Democratic Party. And finally, what is called Die Linke, or the Left Party, is the remnant party of the communist era. It reformulated with reunification and has gone through a couple modifications, and now is simply known as the left. And so this is kind of the state of play as we went into the election cycle this year. We had two contenders for the chancellorship this year. And it's, again, although it's a multi-party system, invariably it's the two strongest parties that have put up candidates. All of them have the right to do so, but part of it is the political reality that there are only two that really have the capacity to field a full campaign on a nationwide basis. And those were the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats. Angela Merkel, here on, probably easy to recognize, on the left, has been the Chancellor of Germany since 2005, and she's been the leader of the Christian Democratic Union since 2000. She's a physical chemist by background and became involved in politics immediately after the change, or as it's called in Germany, Die Wende, the collapse of the wall in 1989. She was the protege of Chancellor Kohl. She's 59 years old. Per Steinbrück is someone who is not well known on this continent, but fairly well known in Europe. Trained in economics, and he's spent his career in a variety of political positions. He's served as a Minister of Economics and Infrastructure in two different German states. Has served as the Minister-President of one of the largest in the Ruhr area. And when both the Union and the Social Democrats formed their last grand coalition in 2005, he was the finance minister and is largely credited with putting Germany on its conservative and sound fiscal footing. Steinbrück is 66. So there were a multitude of issues in the campaign, and I thought just at the outset, I'd highlight four of them. The first that I point out is, I think, symbolized here in the Parthenon, and that question is, to what extent should Germany continue to prop up failing economies within the Eurozone? And Greece particularly epitomized this controversy. It was viewed as having been profligate at the expense of hard-working Germans. 9% of Germany's population are foreign nationals who are permanent residents in Germany. And there is, I think, a degree of simmering anger, even among many mainstream Germans, about immigrants in Germany. And particularly targeted at the Turks, who are by far the largest single foreign national in Germany. And frustration, I think, in part directed at their failure in the eyes of many to integrate themselves into German society. And it's been this that fringe parties in particular have tried to exploit the anger, but I think only with minimal success. I suspect that the major single factor in the dampening of what I think would otherwise be a fairly explosive issue is just that Germany's economy has done so well that it has not been the factor it would otherwise be. And it is that economy that I think also led to Merkel's party doing as well as it did at the elections. The economy in Germany is the strongest in Europe, and it's the strongest it's been any time since reunification. The Social Democrats have made, as part of their platform, dual citizenship as a way of creating greater social and political engagement by these permanent residents, many of whom, hundreds of thousands, who are actually born in Germany, but continue to be, of course, parented and holding the citizenship of their parents. Two other issues not unfamiliar to us: minimum wage and income taxes. We had our top 1%. There was a similar debate in Germany. Now, political campaigns in Germany are much more genteel than ours, and certainly much more low-key. It is simply a different political culture. There are some very specific limitations on campaigning in Juneau, or in Germany. I would simply highlight there are very, very short campaign seasons. For the most part, the actual public portion is usually about 6 weeks in duration. There are very few radio or television commercials. They are not besieged night and day. And for that matter, there's very few nationwide televised debates by party functionaries at any level. As you'll note here, or as I note, there was a single debate between the two primary contestants for the chancellorship, and that took place on September 1st. There was a second-tier debate that took place with the other parties. Campaign financing is another difference. Emphasize first that party organization is a much more rigorous aspect of German politics than it is in this country. And the long and short is you pay to belong to a party. The second thing, they've made a decision about campaign finance, that the issue should not be caps on spending. It should be instead simply full disclosure about the sources of money. And finally, the German government, German law provides for fairly substantial government subsidies of the party, regardless of size, but on a formula that caps the total amount of federal expenditure, but also requires that it not exceed 50% of the remaining sources. So how does one get the message out in a German campaign? Well, it's primarily by poster. And so what I've got to show you next are some of these representative posters, which are ubiquitous. And I start here with the Christian Democrats. We have Merkel here saying, "Together we're successful," or starke Wirtschaft, we're a strong economy. Now, these posters, you wouldn't find people planting them in their front yards. They are on virtually every lamppost in Germany, and that is, for which state governments actually get paid. Those are rented, and it is a profitable undertaking for a portion of the year. The Social Democrats, again, nothing particularly stimulating about it. We have simply the question, is this the best government since reunification? That was the pitch of the Union, and Social Democrats disputing that. And dass wir entscheidet, simply let us all decide, the sense that democracy should be reflected in a much more egalitarian way. Grammarians have actually criticized this, and the posters of one of the other parties for mangling the German language. I'm not sure that's the reason why the SPD Social Democrats lost as much, but for someone who studied German literature and language, it's interesting. The Free Democrats, the message here is simply strong Germany, strong Europe, and only with us. Well, the fact of the matter is it won't be with them. They didn't make the 5% margin. It's the first time since the founding of the German Federal Republic that the Free Democrats will not be in Parliament. Well, here we turn to to some posters of the left. And I should say I had a great time going around photographing these and hundreds of others. And I'm not going to subject you to all of them, but you're going to get a flavor, because I think they reflect in part a lot of the things that are the undercurrents in German society. So this one talks about instead of collecting bottles, let's guarantee a minimum retirement of 1,050 euros. And this this little message is one that the right took up as well, as I'll show in a moment. This one, let's not wait any longer. Let's do away with second class or two-class medicine, which reflects, again, people in the upper classes are able to do their own supplemental private insurance and get immediate access to medical care, which might not be the case for those who are in the general system. And the last on this collection here is ban weapon exports in foreign military missions. And now for a bit of the right in Germany, known as the Republicans. This is actually a right-wing group, and just focus on this one because this is the noose of life, and it talks about retirement and the end. It's a message, and if you notice, the E is actually the sign of the euro, which is one of the Republicans' main themes was to reinstate the German mark, get away from the euro, and the sense that, in fact, it is the euro that is helping to drive down the subsistence living of retirees in Germany. The National Democratic Party is, in general German view, kind of the successor Nazi party. And it doesn't go out of its way to hide its affiliations. So we have here, I'll take this back. Geld für die Oma statt für Sinti und Roma. Money for grandma instead of gypsies and Roma. This one, naturally German. Live in safety or security. Stop the flood of asylees. End genocide. And this is a pitch to $1,000 or 1,000 euros monthly payments to mothers. And here, freedom, homeland, and identity. And finally, in this one, stop teaching Islam. These posters are actually, I think, interesting not only for its role or their role in the debate generally, but it has led to a renewed effort by the interior ministers of all the states of Germany to present their case to the Federal Constitutional Court, asking that the National Democratic Party be banned as anti-constitutional. And they actually presented the petition on Monday, and much of their documentation is based on these posters here and others. This isn't the first time there's been an effort to ban the party as anti-constitutional. There have been ongoing efforts, but the last major one took place in 2003, and it got rejected by the Federal Constitutional Court when it became apparent that much of the information that was relied on was based on information supplied by federal agents and informers who made up the inner circle of the party. And they couldn't separate out how much of it was actually instigated by the outside government folks and those that were actually in the party. And the government was not prepared to make a full disclosure about who's who. And so this is the latest effort. The interior ministers claim that there is nothing in their case that relies on that kind of inner circle documentation this time. The Merkel government has chosen, though, not to take part this time. So we have another interesting party, and Germany has actually about 25 parties that participated in one state or another, and several that played on the national scene. The Pirate Party. So a couple here. She asks, why does the state want to know that I've got nothing to hide? And this was, I think, a play on revelations that were just beginning from Snowden in terms of the role not only of NSA, but in Germany, the complicity of the German intelligence services. And here, simply saying addictive politics instead of the war on drugs. A couple others here, but this has been my favorite simply because this candidate, it's not really a candidate, it's the Shaggy Dog, and he's simply asking, I've got something against Felt, how about you? And Felt refers to the felt hats that captains of industry used to wear, and that's just become a term of derision. It was kind of interesting because this poster actually triggered one blogger that I read in Germany to suggest that the poster that she would most support was one that would read, if elections really made a difference, they'd be outlawed. The Freie Wähler, or free unaligned voters message here, we take you seriously. Not exactly a great catchword. They didn't do very well. The Green Party, and this message for fair wages at least, and you. And here the use of the familiar rather than the formal you, do as opposed to ze, is the other critique. How dare someone be this personal with me? And this one here, people before banks, and you. The alternative for Germany. We don't want a debt union, referring to the European Union. We want more democracy. This one, the Greeks suffer, the Germans pay, and the banks pocket the money. And again, there's still a Marxist-Leninist party here, and their message here is to do away with the Hartz laws, or the so-called labor reforms that took place in the early 2000s, which had the effect of lowering the unemployment and welfare benefits. So this brings us to the results of the election. The union parties won, as you can see, slightly less than 42% of the vote. The next strongest party was the Social Democrats, then followed by the Left Party and the Green Party. And this became the cutoff. I mentioned before that the party has to meet a 5% threshold to make it in. And so for the first time, we have the Free Democrats not making it, the Alternative for Germany slightly under, and the Pirate Party, which did a little better in the last elections, and finally the remaining parties. But if you were to look at the 299 individual seats, the map is predominantly blue, which is to say most of the individual members of Parliament are either Christian Democrats or Christian Social Union members. And they dominated those individual elections. I would say, however, that the Social Democrats head the governments in 9 of Germany's 16 states, and so that reflects that there is a degree of a sense of dispersion of power. And I've highlighted here basically the election outcomes, 3 or 4 points that I'd like to make here. First of all, the new states, that is to say the states that joined after reunification are in bold. And with one exception, Berlin, which simply added East Berlin. But what is interesting to me is that if you look at the overall list here, there are only 2 states in which the Union did not win a plurality of the vote, and those are in Bremen and in Hamburg, and those are both traditional Social Democratic bastions. In 4 of the 7 new states, if I include Berlin, the Left Party outpolled the Social Democrats. So it still has an incredibly strong role and tradition in what is former East Germany. And finally, I'd note that actually the National Democratic Party, the neo-Nazi party, actually outpolled the Green Party in virtually all of the former East German states. And only one other place did they do as well, and that was Bavaria. So this is the outcome today, and it's what forces the requirement of a coalition government. As the party winning the most votes, it fell to the Union to try and form a government. It, however, does not have an outright majority, and therefore needs to find a coalition partner. Its preferred partner, as I mentioned, and with whom it has governed the last 4 years. The Free Democrats didn't cut it, and hence the need to find another partner. But before I do it, just a little entertainment about the new members here. Striking, they're much farther along in terms of trying to work towards gender balance, and that has been a major issue in German political party structure. More than a third are first-time members of parliament. And what I found striking is not only is the youngest member 26, but if you'll note, he is of Turkish origin, and reflecting the effort to try and better integrate Germans of Turkish descent into the political fabric of the country. The three people pictured here, Gabriel, Merkel, and Seehofer, are the heads of the three coalition partners that have been negotiating for the better part of 5 weeks. They reached an agreement finally last week. As you note, or as I've noted here, they've allocated the seats, but they have agreed and they have been very successful at this point in keeping secret who will actually occupy which cabinet posts. And the agreement is to run through this entire legislative period. This is basically a thumbnail sketch of some of the issues and the outcomes in terms of the negotiation. Where I've indicated at the end of each of these on taxation, no new taxes, the prevailing wisdom or view was that of the union, no new taxes, no effort to cap managers was another victory for the union over the Social Democrats. The Christian Social Union out of Bavaria insisted that there be a toll system in the road, on the roads of Germany for non-Germans. This may be violative of European Union law, but coalitions agreed to it subject to that finding. The dual citizenship was agreed to. There's no mention here. Germany has generally been getting out of atomic energy. The push for use of renewable energy is found by virtually all the parties, but the Social Democrats have been particularly strong in trying to set higher goals. Back again. Minimum wage is a partial victory for the Social Democrats. It's not happening as fast as they'd hoped. Everybody is enthusiastic about the German industrial complex. It is one of the largest exporters of weapon systems in the world, and clearly important to the economy. Let me just highlight a couple others here, or one other, and that is on foreign affairs. One should not expect any particular change in direction by the German government. Foreign policy, as historically has been the case in this country, is pretty, I'd say, bipartisan. They've agreed that they want to particularly highlight three relationships in Europe: those on their borders to the west and east, France and Poland, and again, particularly try to advance Turkey's eventual admission into the European Union. While the leadership of the Social Democrats were quite emphatic about the importance of joining a coalition government, they had incredible resistance from their party base. And Many thought that the last time they joined the coalition, they got beaten down by Merkel, and that the party significantly lost ground. And there are also ideological purists who think it is unconscionable to be joining with the Union. As a consequence of that, the party leadership was forced to agree to submit the agreement to a vote of all the party members. There are some 470,000 of them. And that vote is taking place this week through December 12th. And it's not a sure thing. Even though the party leadership is fairly confident, there have been many break-offs. The Young Socialists, which is their younger division, 7 of the states have, the leadership there have called on their membership to vote against the agreement. And so there is a possibility that 2 weeks from now, Germany will still be without a new government. What are the alternatives if the agreement fails? There are basically 4 alternatives. One is for the Christian Democrats and Christian Social Union to try and reach agreement with the Green Party. That would give them enough votes. They did start a discussion at the very outset following the election, and it's probably the most likely scenario. The Greens are interested in getting in some configuration. The second alternative is for the Social Democrats to try and come up with a coalition. And this is what the party base seems to be most interested in. That is a combination of the Social Democrats, the left, and the Green Party. The problem there has been that the party leadership historically has accused the left party as being not competent to rule because of its history, its tie to former East Germany. And that's a barrier that would have to be overcome. Another possibility, more remote, is that the union parties simply try to rule as a minority government and hope to, on every given issue, work out a coalition. Not very likely. But the last alternative is probably the least attractive of all, which is for all. And that is new elections, because it's not likely that the alignments will change much. So what does it mean for the US-German relations? Probably not a great deal. The party agreement emphasizes the special relationship between Germany and the US. But one of the things that's evolved in the weeks since the election is the continuing revelations about the NSA have unfolded, and particularly the idea that Chancellor Merkel's phone conversations were monitored has been this demand that we've got to curb our intelligence community. We need to work out a more formal agreement with the US in terms of limiting that spying. It's also leading to a major push to become independent of our Google and other major information routers to develop an independent European-based, preferably German-based system. There will be a continuing push for a free trade agreement between the European Union and the US. And the other spillover over the last several years has been the idea of restricting Germans' involvement in multinational policing efforts a la Afghanistan. And they've made a special point, again, looking at the US, about restricting the development of drones by the German military or their operations within Germany. So with that fairly long presentation, let me take your questions if there are any. Mark.
Could you speak briefly about the...
Actually, what I'm going to do is ask if you could go to the mic so that that can be picked up on the recording system here, and I'd ask that for each person who.
Could you speak briefly about their minimum wage? Is it considered a living wage, or is it more for like college students?
It's aimed at being a living wage for minimum wage for all workers, not just for college. At 850 euros an hour.
Could you talk a little bit about the role of labor unions in politics in Germany?
The role of labor unions. Well, a couple things. German corporate governance is much different than in the U.S. And most boards of directors of major corporations actually have designated union seats, and my recollection is, but I haven't played with it a long time, I think it's about 1/3 of the management board of directors are to be from labor. Labor unions are the backbone of the Social Democratic Party, and and those unions have had decisive influence, I think, in terms of the direction of that party, but has been key in a more general sense in particularly pushing the continued expenditure of German resources on the armaments industry, high-tech, aerospace industry as well. And in that respect, for the most part, my sense is there's a lot more labor peace overall in Germany than we might find in most other European countries. That's my sense of it. But again, it's not an area that I can say I know a great deal about. Any other questions?
How does Germany feel about the Ukraine being part of the European Union?
The German government has been a leading advocate for inclusion of the Ukraine into the European Union. I think most of you are aware that the pending treaty to bring the Ukraine into the Union was basically mothballed at the last minute after European Union delegates arrived to sign the agreement. Pressure from the Russian government proved overwhelming. It's led to many street protests in the country. But the European view has been that it will eventually happen, and they're very supportive of doing anything they can to bring in the entire periphery of the old Soviet Union into the European Union.
One of the slides indicated that Germany had 55% in renewable energy, and they want to increase it. What are they invested in terms of renewable energy, and where do they want to go with it?
Well, the primary thing that will strike you if you just drive through the German countryside are windmills. There are wind farms throughout the country. And so that's been probably the most visible source of renewable energy. I know that there are tidal projects. I'm not aware of any major hydroelectric projects that are on the horizon. One of the emerging issues, though, in terms of energy generally, has been trying to sort out fracking, which is starting to be done in Germany as well. Some hesitance here. They're looking to the U.S. to see which is the most advanced in the technologies of fracking. But a lot of panic, or German word is Angst, fear about water table contamination primarily. And but it's again, it was talked about a bit, but I don't think the parties have done anything other than to say we should be exploring the latest technologies and exploiting our resources to be as energy independent as we can. Part of the problem for Germany, indeed most of Europe, is having to draw its resources from from Russia in terms of gas, natural gas, which is a predominant form of energy. Coal, which Germany was well noted for, has been heavily curtailed again because of priority on air quality and climate change.
One of the consensus points from the election was tolls on non-Germans, and I'm just curious what form those would take.
Well, generally speaking, and you have several countries that already do have tolls. They're simply if you have a rental car, you're likely already tagged. They have automatic scanning devices as you go on toll roads, and if you're not compliant, you'd be ticketed like anyone else. The controversy here is simply how does it become discriminatory if you target only non-German vehicles in Germany? And unresolved question, the sense is that it's probably violative of European Union treaty obligations, but until that's actually determined, it's now part of the platform.
So it's literally tolls the way we know a toll road.
Yes, right.
Can you tell us about the healthcare system in Germany?
Not intelligently.
Hey, you said something about like the angst over like the Turkish immigrants and stuff, but it sounded like the NPD didn't even register on your chart, you know. So the right-wing kind of groups don't really seem to have really gained much traction, but can you comment a little bit on that? Because I'm kind of surprised. It seems like you hear stories about people, you know, being angry about immigrants and some of the issues just from Americans' perspective. Even the conservative Christian Democrat Party is so left-wing that it's just amazing to me a little bit. And why is that?
Well, I guess I would start by describing, going back to the 1950s with what was called the Wirtschaftswunder, the economic boom that happened in Germany, in West Germany, starting in the early 50s. It had an incredible demand for workers that could not be supplied by the German population. And so German government went out and invited initially primarily Italians, Spaniards, Yugoslavs, and then Turks to provide for that labor shortage. And they came by the hundreds of thousands. Initially the idea was short stay, 2-3 years, return. But what developed in Germany, particularly with the Turkish population, are enclaves, quarters of major cities where you have people who are now in their 3rd or 4th generation who are Turkish descent and for the most part are Turkish citizens. Germany requires any person born in Germany who is of foreign parentage to make an election by the time they turn 23 about whether they will be German citizens or citizens of their parents' country. And most end up opting for their home country. And so that's been part of the tension. That's also why the Social Democrats have pushed for the dual citizenship. East Germany, in particular, after the change in 1989, there were large numbers of Africans who studied there stayed, but with unemployment rates in the 20, 30, 40%, depending on the state, there was incredible resentment of the government support for foreigners who were there, either as students or their SLEs that were being supported by the government or taking jobs. And that caused riots. They happen occasionally still. They've died down in the last 5 or 10 years. But that is another basis. I'm being signaled that we're at a point where I have to shut off, but I'd be glad to continue on this topic afterwards. Thank you all for your attention.
Bruce Botelho spoke about the 2013 German federal elections at this Juneau World Affairs Council presentation, produced in collaboration with 360 North. It was recorded on December 4th, 2013 at 360 in Juneau.